All right, welcome viewers. Big focus this hour will be the dramatic showdown at the White House. What is supposed to be a high-stakes diplomatic meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky turned out into an Oval Office clash like never before. On one side, Trump frustrated, demanding gratitude, pushing for a peace deal on his terms. On the other, Zelensky defiant, unwilling to settle for a ceasefire without security guarantees. The drama did not just reflect a diplomatic dispute, it was a signal that the future of US-Ukraine relations is now on a shaky ground. Trump says Zelensky is overplaying his hand, but the big question is he? Or was this just a deliberate attempt by the former US president, in fact, the current US president, also to realign America's stance on the war? His message was loud and clear. No blank checks, no unconditional support to any nation, be it Ukraine or any other nation. Instead, he says that Ukraine is gambling with World War III. The fallout was swift. Zelensky was sent out. The rare earth minerals deal, which was of course highly anticipated, even that collapsed. Europe immediately rushed to rally behind Ukraine. And before we get into more details of this, take a look at this fiery exchange between Trump, Zelensky, and of course a bit of Vance as well.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
That was with
Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards. It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change. You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
So viewers, this was not a drama on a reality show. This was at the Oval Office. On one side, you had the leaders, the top two leaders of the strongest nation in the world. On the other, you had a president who is at war, and that is what happened at the Oval Office. Since then, Zelensky has dialed down. He's tried to de-escalate the entire tension, stressing how US is a very important partner for Ukraine. But also at the same time, Trump has refused to take a step back. Listen in.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelenskyy, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up as strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight, fight, fight. We're looking to end the death. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that. Not for this country. He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you.
And of course, this entire drama that played out in the Washington, D.C. has become a global gossip fodder. Moscow is watching, celebrating Trump's tough stance, mocking, in fact, Zelenskyy's humiliation. But at the same time, Ukraine's allies now have strongly rallied behind Zelenskyy. Listen in.
We stand with Ukraine. I've had meetings with President Zelenskyy on multiple occasions, including, of course, in Kyiv, in Ukraine, where I travelled very early on in my prime ministership. And this year, we've seen that land war in Europe go on for 3 years. The people of Ukraine are fighting not just for their own national sovereignty. They are fighting for the international rule of law. Australia has committed some $1.5 billion to help Ukraine defend itself. More than $1.3 billion of that is military support. We will continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, because this is the struggle of a democratic nation versus an authoritarian regime led by Volodymyr Putin, who clearly has imperialistic designs not just on Ukraine, but throughout that region.
Ensuite, je pense que nous connaissons tous la situation. Il y a un agresseur qui est la Russie. Il y a un peuple agressé qui est l'Ukraine. Je pense que nous avons tous eu raison d'aider l'Ukraine et de sanctionner la Russie il y a 3 ans et de continuer à le faire. Et quand je dis nous, ce sont les États-Unis d'Amérique, les Européens, les Canadiens, les Japonais et plusieurs autres. Et que c'est cela. Et qu'il faut remercier tous ceux qui ont aidé. Et qu'il faut respecter ceux qui depuis le début se battent. Parce qu'ils se battent pour leur dignité, leur indépendance, pour leurs enfants et pour la sécurité de l'Europe. Ce sont des choses simples, mais elles sont bonnes à rappeler dans ces moments-là. C'est tout.
So with all this happening, viewers, the big question, where does this leave Ukraine? Is Trump's push for peace a practical solution or a diplomatic retreat on Ukraine's part? Will this confrontation weaken Zelenskyy's war efforts, or will it now strengthen his case for more international support? And perhaps the biggest question on the show today is if this is the new reality of the US foreign policy under President Trump. Joining us right now, our guest for the show, Veena Sikri, former diplomat, Pathikrit Pain, who is a geopolitical analyst. Welcome to you both for joining us for this discussion. Veena ji, I'll start with you first. I mean, there are two sides to this. One, supporting Trump, stating that, yes, he's now given a reality check to Zelenskyy about what's happening, what the US's future plans are. And the other, of course, backing Zelenskyy as well, the European allies and everyone else. But again, amid all this, what's undeniable is this was an absolute circus, a reality drama at the Oval Office, unexpected.
Well, I do not think you can call it as a circus or anything like that. I would not use such words. I can only say that what you have broadcast, exactly what you've shown of what was happening in the in the White House, is in the Oval Office, is that President Zelensky was extremely disrespectful. You know, when you're a guest at the White House, when you're the guest of the President of the United States, you don't just cut in all the time. You don't try and overwork, not even listening to what President Trump is saying. He was constantly intervening, constantly putting his own words, constantly trying to override what President Trump and Vice President Vance was saying, and was extremely rude. I have not seen such an occasion where at a summit level, which is being broadcast live to the world media, summit level between the President of the United States and his guest, who is just, in this case, the President of Ukraine, having such an rude exchange where the President Zelensky was not even willing to listen. And I agree that, you know, it's what we are seeing today, that President Zelensky was trying to build up his position for another summit meeting which is taking place tomorrow in the UK, where Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the leaders of the European Union countries, and of course President Zelensky, I think, will be there to rally behind him. But I think what President Trump said made a lot of sense. He had on the anvil two agreements. One is the natural resources agreement, the critical rare earths agreement, and the other was the peace deal. But on either of them, you know, there was not even a word of thanks from President Zelensky saying, yes, he has received all this support. Subsequently, he has come out and said all this, but not there in the White House. And he was just saying that, no, I want, you know, he clearly wants to continue the fighting. And President Trump was right that you're gambling with World War III. So the continuation of the hostilities at this time will certainly lead to a complete polarization. And I'm a little worried, to say the least, to say what Prime Minister Albanese and others are saying. We do know that Prime Minister Starmer has been in the White House.
Absolutely. Veenaji, a very interesting point that you're making there. The fact that Zelensky, the manner in which he was talking, it's questionable whether this is the sort of behavior you would expect from a guest at the Oval Office. Pathikrit, now, again, the other side of the argument here is that Trump apparently was trying to push for a ceasefire, and Zelensky basically says that it is not as simple as that. You can't just tell Putin that, all right, let's stop shooting, let's stop barraging, and let's stop fighting today, and everything's going to stop. He continued to make a point that this has happened in the past, and Putin eventually ends up violating ceasefire. So it's not as simple as Trump was making it sound.
So, Ashish, you know, Zelensky has been propped up by the Western media as an entitled lad and as somebody who is brave. I don't believe him, frankly. And, you know, you may not like what I'm saying, but that's what my perception is. When you are fighting a war with borrowed money and borrowed weapons, a war in which you have been propped up to fight, and with an inevitable consequence where you would lose the war, and a war which should not have happened in the first place, if you had not insisted for a needless NATO membership, then you try to play the second fiddle role. You don't go and tell the President of the United States that you must give the money, or I will not do this, or I'll not do that. It doesn't happen that way. Let me tell you, in 2022, when the war started in February, within a month, Russia was on the verge of signing a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine. It was stopped by the same European lobby, which is today propping Zelensky by saying, no, we are with you. This European lobby has bluffed. You know, none of them have the capacity and the guts to fight Russia. They use the Ukrainians as a pawn and as a proxy to fight a war which they would not themselves have fought against Russia. And this is, unfortunately, somebody who had his profession as a comedian. I don't want to disrespect that, but it doesn't understand diplomacy. He would have got a de facto guarantee from United States if he had gone for the mineral deal, but he did not do that. Secondly, all that Trump was asking for, not that you completely, that the war, he's saying, let's have a ceasefire first. Now, if the ceasefire happens, you can then negotiate with the Russians. He is not saying that agree to everything that Russia is saying. But frankly, someday this war had to stop. And let me tell you, it is not just about the Ukrainians you don't have people to fight the war today in Ukraine. And you have a president who wants to continue fighting on borrowed money. You see the face of the Ukrainian ambassador in the United States. She had her face down when she saw the behavior.
Absolutely. Pathikrit, while you mentioned that, I'll ask my team to play out the visuals there of the Ukraine ambassador's reaction. And Veenaji, it's interesting. The fact that the Ukraine ambassador there realized that this was getting out of hand. and this is not a good viewing for Ukraine and for their efforts in the entire process of the war. Again, Zelensky now, if you look at his statements ever since he's come out of the meeting, looks like he's had some sort of a self-introspection. He's realized that he's taken a big misstep. Veenaji, in your experience as a former diplomat, do you think it's too late now for him to fix? Because again, the manner in which he was confrontative there, confrontational in fact, it doesn't look like it's the same Zelensky after the meeting.
Yes, clearly he may have. I'm sure his ambassador to the United States, who was looking so distressed, as you rightly say, she would have advised him. She would have told him, you don't come to the Oval Office and you don't do this to the President of the United States, especially when the President of the United States has given you $350 billion and a lot of it is unaccountable. In fact, Vice President Vance and others are saying, let's do an inquiry. Elon Musk has said, let's do an inquiry. What's happened to that money we've given? Where have all the weapons gone? What's happened to them? There's so much, uncertainty about what President Zelensky did with that money, and he's completely blasé about it. He's put that into his back pocket and putting out his hand asking for more and say, I don't want a ceasefire. So I think he has really played his cards very badly. I do not know what will happen in the summit meeting in London tomorrow, but I certainly think that it's going to take a lot for him to set this right. He should come back, as President Trump himself said, he can come back when he's ready for peace. So he has to show that he's ready for peace and he's willing to come back and talk peace. So this is what he has to show. Whether he's done it already in those few statements, I do not think so. I think there's a long way to go. I think certainly what President Trump is very clear on, all of us in the world should be clear on, that we want that ceasefire so that peace talks can start and there can be peace. We don't want this war to continue. We want dialogue and diplomacy. India has always been on the side of dialogue and diplomacy.
Absolutely. I think that's a point that Donald Trump made very clear. The fact that he doesn't want Ukraine to have a strong ally to continue the war. He wants Ukraine to have a strong ally to ensure that the war is over. And Patikrit, interestingly, if you see the kind of reactions that are coming in right now, interestingly, very coincidentally, in fact, Russia did appoint a new ambassador to the US around the same time that this drama happened. And if you look at what's happening on the other side, in Ukraine, every single Ukrainian leader and the Western allies of Kyiv now seem to be standing firmly. Do you think a lot of focus now is on the Ukraine and the US relationship, but do you think this particular interaction has made the relationship between Ukraine and its European allies even more stronger? Because now there seems to be a stronger resolve that now that US is out of the question, European allies need to stand together strongly with Ukraine.
Yeah, but who would fight for Ukraine? You know, the question that was asked to Keir Starmer by President Trump, that can you take on Russia on your own? He had no answer. So frankly speaking, first and foremost, the transatlantic bridge has been broken between the United States and Europe. All these European countries have their own severe economic, social, political, internal crisis going on, energy crisis going on. Most of them, they don't even know if the next term they will be elected or not, and they want to pledge $700 billion for Zelensky without any understanding of how the consequence of the war will be. So I think the entire Western Europe, this entire leftist cabal, which has this old, and first and foremost, Ashish, it seems somebody wrote that script of the tweet and every head of state of Europe actually was tweeting that. It was same, which means that there is somebody who was orchestrating it, that let's show the bravado. You go and show the bravado to the president that
Mr.
I'm not going to go down.
Patikrit Pain, are you now saying that this is another international toolkit that we just saw?
NATO does not stand a chance even against Russia without the American weapon system. If the United States pulls off from NATO, tomorrow NATO and European Union may not survive. And they want to fight against Russia. And let me tell you, last one point. Zelensky might say whatever he wants. Ukraine and United States are not on the same stature. It's a $29 trillion economy versus a $180 billion economy. Even with Russia, there is no comparison. Russia has 6,000 nuclear weapons. It is far more important for United States than this Ukraine. Ukraine must stop this war for its own benefit.
Absolutely.
And also for the benefit of the rest
Patikrit,
of the world.
I think this is exactly the sort of advice that Zelensky has received after this entire confrontation, and that's exactly why increasingly now we are seeing statements coming in from him again stating importantly how US is a very important ally and he doesn't want to spoil the relations with the United States, and of course it has to be with the US that he goes towards the negotiation as well when it comes to the war. In fact, Veena Sikri ji and Pathikrit Pain, really appreciate you joining us on the broadcast there with your expertise on this. And of course, it's a very interesting viewing, not just what happened in the Oval Office, but also, of course, what happens next. And amid all this, we, of course, continue to get you viewers all the details of everything that's happening across the nation. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the broadcast. Stay tuned.